Oh yeah. Anyway, hi guys. We decided we're just going to break down this track for y'all and sort of discuss how we made it. Focusing on one song is probably the best way to sort of talk about how we make music generally, because every song is different, sort of variations on a theme, really. So we're gonna do this track "Run for Your Life" off of our last album, There Existed an Addiction to Blood. And this is a song that features rapper LeChat. And basically, songs for us kind of start one of three ways, or one of a few ways. And one of those is if there's a feature on a song, we probably wrote the song for them.
Well, do you think we should, I mean, Mary Claire, maybe you can tell us whether you think it's a good idea. Should we just listen to the song before we start this?
Yeah, I think that's a great call.
That's what I would do if we weren't remote on the internet. But
you guys haven't all done your homework and listened to our entire catalog? That was assigned, right? No.
I play this song in my class, actually. I can't remember what goes in front of it and behind it, or what the lecture is about that day, but I do play it.
Well, yeah, if I can find the actual master of it here. And this is probably something I should turn down. Yeah, shall we just play it? And then someone tell me if it's too loud or too quiet?
Yeah.
Hollywood to be in Hollywood. Shh. You done did it now. Heard the dope was good and well, a hood's a hood. Fuck. Shh. You gon' get it now. They said she gon' get you right. They said she got all the juice. They said keep her happy though, or she be coming after you. But shit, you get invincible when you get high. And them sticky fingers never stop to wonder why. So now you sprinting by that fish market, trying to make it to summer. The blood in the ears is drumming, the heart is a cable jumper. The brain is flipping the language, the lungs are probably toast. But everybody who ever stopped running is now a ghost. You ain't seen them headlights in a minute, so it might be cool. Night is falling gently and there ain't no one in sight for you. Stop tripping, but don't stop moving, ho. Not giving the visions a minute to make a move, let's go. Ho, get it right, get out of sight. She on the street, run for your life. Don't you know that she ain't afraid to shoot?
You ain't scared, is you?
You fucked up and she coming for you.
You ain't scared, is you?
Hope get it right, get out of sight. She on the street, run for your life. Don't you know that she cut you for fun?
You ain't scared, is you?
If she coming for you, better run.
You ain't scared, is you?
Turns into an alley quick, just a wall that's made of brick. With a dirty mattress leaning up against it, smell like piss. Big green dumpster to the right, color rusted, look like wine. Lid is heavy, but it's creaking open, that'll do just fine. Bags of trash with bites took out, coffee grounds is spilling down. Duck and slam the lid closed, damn, that metal echo hella loud. Quiet at the plastic switch with every tiny move or twitch. Liquid all across the bottom, probably about a quarter inch. Shiver all up in the bones, of body feeling crazy. Faces streaked with tears and dirt, vision going hazy. Fuck it, it's too dark to see. Cannot cry and can't be weak. It's a code of honor, gotta keep it gangster in the streets. OG, OG, Jesus. Slap that coopster all day, you knew just how this would be. It's the devil's playground, ain't for play, but you was born into it. Now far in the distance, creeping up is that underground music. Ho, get it right, get out of sight. She on the street, run for your life. Don't you know that she ain't afraid to shoot?
You ain't scared, is you?
You fucked up and she coming for you.
You ain't scared, is you?
Ho, get it right, get out of sight. She on the street, run for your life. Don't you know that she cut you for fun?
You ain't scared, is you?
If she coming for you, better run.
You ain't scared, is you?
It's
hustler, chat the killer, the murder, the bitch they love to hate. Yeah, you try to run, but I caught you, you know it's no escape. Burning both your legs with your head, but yeah, your mouth irate. Throw your garbage ass in the dumpster and now shit on your grave. Blood, I'm so addicted to blood, I'm cutting your body up. Never know your name, your remains is scattered through the mud. Yeah, they should've warned you, the chat bitch, man, she don't give a fuck. Put you in the ground and relapse, go dig your ass back up. Ain't no word I had, I'm psychotic, you haters gotta die. Schizophrenic, bipolar bitch, I feed my bitch your ass. Drama queen, I'm bringing the drama, don't fuck with me, I hunt you. Cut you up like me, take your kids, a very tasty luncheon. Body you bitches for fun, punch a big hole to your lungs. Cut out your motherfucking tongue, burn you or cook you a dumb. Boosting up the murder rate, Hannibal leg to your face. Chain soldier cage, another missing person case.
Ho, get it right, get out of sight. She on the street, run for your life. Don't you know that she ain't afraid to shoot?
You ain't scared, is you?
You fucked up and she coming for you.
You ain't scared, is you?
Ho, get it right, get out of sight. She on the street, run for your life. Don't you know that she cut you for fun?
You ain't scared, is you?
If she coming for you, better run.
You ain't scared, is you?
Cool. So that's where we ended up. Um,
The finished song.
and I think this song like embodies a lot. Like it's a good way of talking about kind of the way we work in general, because there's sort of so many stages and so many steps. And I think
It took how long from when we started this to when we finished it? It was like,
well, let me check the dates on the.
Well, but the idea was
Oh,
is
right.
from like 2012. So
Yeah,
Right.
the idea is really old, but like we made the first version of this beat December 12th, 2017, and the final version not even in this folder. We finished it. We finished it when we were in New York. What was that like?
March something, yeah.
Like end of
March
March.
30th. March. Yeah, we came home on March 30th.
It was like
Yeah.
basically exactly a year.
So that week before that, 20 something to 30th. Like 7 days we were working. But even then, that was like, there had been vocals. There had been it had all been written for a year.
Like a year at that point.
That was just final vocals.
So yeah, clipping songs sort of start with like one of us has an idea at some point in the process, and this one was really like, this one kind of happened in a few different steps, right? Because like this idea of rapping to music that's coming from passing cars had been around for a long time. We've been throwing this idea around a lot.
Yeah, that was something I really wanted to do on Mid City, which is our first record. And back then, the idea was much more like elaborate and gimmicky. It was like, the idea was like each car that would pass would be playing like a different style of music, you know, that like sometimes it was a rap song and like sometimes it was, you know, a mariachi band, and sometimes it was classical music, and sometimes it was like, you know, talk radio that like you would have this like kind of counterpoint wordplay with. And it was this like really kind of like comedy sketch novelty music sort of idea, which is like how like, I don't know, 70% of my ideas and then we just kind of never did it because it also like, it seemed so complicated. And I like over the years I kept thinking about this way of like, you know, having like 20 beats running at once and like crossfading between them and sort of wirelessly transmitting them to different car radios as they passed, and like orchestrating this whole like thing, this way of doing it in real time that was totally impractical.
Very complicated.
It's super complicated, unnecessarily so, and like so impractical that there's no way we could actually like do the thing, which is a problem we run into all the time.
That is something we do, where one of us has like a good idea and then the next one has a slightly better idea, and we riff on it until it's utterly impossible, but we're so in love with the idea that we'll never go back and just do the doable one. We just throw it away.
Right.
Who has the most complicated ideas? Something tells me it's Jonathan, if I had to guess.
Depends on like complicated how.
Yeah.
Jonathan's ideas tend to be the ones that are like start with a technical thing, like this is a technique, or this is a way to wrongly use this instrument that I would like to do, or something. And Bill's ideas tend to be like really concept heavy, and like sometimes impossibly so. And then my ideas tend to be like about some like trying to copy some rap song I heard. Or like where usually just like a cadence idea. I would really like to rap like Schoolboy Q today. How can you guys facilitate that?
Sounds like a fun talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had this idea in the back of our heads, right? That we wanted to hear David rap over music coming out of passing cars. Well, collectively, this was an idea in the
yeah, it was in the clipping
of ideas that we had, right? That was like a thing that we thought would be cool to try. And then when we were scheming, because we were making this horror record, when we were scheming on who we would want to do guest verses on it, and like thinking about rappers.
So yeah. So we made, making this record, a horror record, and trying to do sort of what we always do, which is, collect, to reference and pay tribute to the things that were inspiring the particular project we were on. I think we made like a sort of a dream list of horror rap features that would be, also like a rundown of our influences. To make sure we had all of those. And we had already done a song 2 albums earlier with Gangsta Boo from 3 6 Mafia. And I'd always, sorry, something fell. I had always wanted to do something also with another member of 3 6 Mafia, LeChat. But it had always been in the back of my mind, like, because we'd known we were gonna do this horror record for a while, it was like, okay, save reaching out to her until we're doing something scary, because I feel like the chat is maybe the one of the scarier, more horror and violence focused rappers in 3 6 Mafia, and we really wanted to make something that was very specifically for her to do the thing we like her doing on. So I had this idea that if we were going to do something with her, it should be a song where she is like clearly hunting David, or hunting the figure that David is playing, the character David's playing.
Yeah. My memory of it is that once we decided we wanted LeChat on a song, like the marriage of that idea with the car driving by idea, and then the whole structure and the whole idea behind the song happened in like 15 minutes or something.
Well, I had an idea of an idea of 2 verses, 2 guest verses and one David in the middle running. But once I said David was like running alley to alley from them, you suggested, you were like, hey, remember that old idea? Let's do it like that and have it be a drive-by.
So, I mean, and so like a lot of times our ideas of who we want on a song too, we don't necessarily know we're going to get that person, or they're going to see our email, or they're going to respond to us at all, but we still feel like we have to make enough of a song to show to them before we even make that first, like that reach out that first time. So so we made the song minus her verse before we reached out even, and
yeah,
with no plan of what we were going to do if she said no.
If she said no, yeah, we were going to.
The song just wouldn't come out. That's happened a number of times, but because it's so specifically designed for her, like to the point where like I like found this text chain earlier with Jeff Weiss where I was asking him about like, does anybody know any information about streets around which LeShack grew up so that I can reference them in the verse, and like what project should I be talking about? I didn't know enough. I'm like a big fan of Memphis rap music, but I remember like me and Bill going through all of the songs, like combing them for specifics and like trying to figure out where 3-6 recorded most of the time. And like,
You really did your research.
Yeah, well, so before we even made that demo, of course, to make that demo, Jonathan and I had to we made, I think, 5 other beats.
Well, before we
that would be coming out of the car. So like we had to making this one song we made 6 songs to make one kind of thing.
Yeah. And before we even, I just pulled up what was the very first version of the song that we exported to, if we want to like go through that and talk about like the different sounds. Like this is before David had written anything. So really the very first version that we made, you can see on the Logic session, ignore this track here. It's just kind of like a timing pulse that was being sent to the modular to control tempo. It doesn't make any sound. But you can see there's a lot of information in the hooks. I don't know if you guys can read the markers up here, and the verses are actually just silent. So like that. So like that's an intro, and then we get to a verse. The verses are actually silent. But the end of the song, like it sounds pretty much exactly like, it is pretty much exactly what we ended up with. Like none of these sounds are temporary, which is unusual for us too, because we usually if we're making something really fast that we know we need to like work on a bunch, we'll use a bunch of temporary sounds. I like using, cheap presets and like just quick things like most of our songs that have like melodic and beat elements will just be like 808s and pianos,
until we switch all the sounds. Yeah, exactly.
Sounds later, but this one we didn't. We just made all the sounds as we went. Should we talk about what these sounds are?
Sure.
Is that useful, interesting?
Do it.
I was just remembering back to, I don't remember, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, you were telling me how a different approach you took that was like just click tracks. Like you made like a super complicated like tempo map with all these mixed meters. Then you said click track over, and you were like, let's see what happens. Like let's see what he does. And I feel like that's totally a skill that like learning to elicit a great performance out of someone who's extremely like virtuosic.
Yeah, that's how we
special skill, and it's interesting to see all these approaches and how they play themselves out.
Yeah, that's how we made Story 2, which was like an additive process, like shifting time signature. We made that beat with just a click track of like, when you hear this sound, it means the time signature has changed. And when you hear this sound, it means it's the downbeat of a measure. And then this sound is just keeping the pulse. And then the kick and the snare are playing like an imagined rhythm that you could follow in that time signature. Like, it's so clinical. And then we replaced all the sounds later. The sort of follow up to that on the most recent record, Story 7, which does even more obnoxious time signature metric modulation thing. We knew.
Boy, and the intro just fucked.
That's for the next
our new intro. Yeah.
The Story 7, we didn't even bother. We just made the beat that we wanted from the very beginning because we knew he could do it. We didn't need to like.
There was no training wheels on that one. Let's see if he can do this.
Though the beat kind of already does that. Like it already has sounds that indicate where you are. Like rhythm.
Yeah. So it's an easy one to hear.
So this beat is like. Run for Your Life is really, really simple, actually, as our tracks go. There's only a few elements, because here, like, all these green regions here are actually just control signals to the modular. You can see this guy is muted. And actually this guy is too. So the kick drum, I think is something we made on the modular. If I had to guess, there's one particular kick drum sound that we patch up on this guy over and over again. It's the kick drum in our song "Taken Off" is probably where it's the most prominently. But we found one particular. We love the way, like, you know, these synthesizers.com oscillators into this filter with this envelope generator. We just love the way it sounds so much that we just.
Is that a Moog?
Sorry, it's not. It's Moog format. It's a variety of different manufacturers. I've been building this thing since like 2006. This like upper half here is primarily this company called synthesizers.com out of Texas. I started with their stuff. Now it's sort of mix and match in there. They still make great stuff. And then this bottom cabinet down here is MOTM format. And about half of those I built from kits. This chunk of white modules here are by a company called Modcan from Canada, he's not making stuff anymore because he got really sick. I haven't heard an update in a long time, but I hope he's doing okay. And that envelope generator that he makes, I don't know, there's something about it. It's punchier than any other envelope generator. Like you can get, it's got a hold on it, like it's an 80H, it's an AHDSR envelope. Mm-hmm. And there's something about that hold, like you can get it so short that it functions in the way that like a limiter or a compressor.
It feels like a compressor. Like it just makes that.
Like the kick drum in this song feels really distorted, but it's actually not. It's just a square wave. Like, I mean, in the way that distortion is a square wave, right? But there's no like distortion anywhere in it, even when it's doing stuff like this.
I mean, that's like our standard. Like when we want that kick, we use those 4 modules in a row.
Yeah.
It has a nice attack, like a nice little click on the attack.
That's that envelope, right?
Yeah.
It's a really fast, clicky attack.
Modular drums are really hard to get to sound like they have their own like sort of quirky like analog-y charm to them, like always, no matter what. But to get them to be like really like punchy and aggressive and feel like not like a fun experiment, you know, like a science experiment in a way.
So it actually like drives that you can use.
Yeah, like it takes. I mean, you can always use them, right? Like I love tracks that sound like a science lab too, you know, and we do that a lot too. But like, usually if you want a kick drum to feel like you're in a club, you don't make it on the modular. Like you go back to.
If you want a song that's going to play in the club, you usually don't make a bunch of beats and play them out of fucking cars.
That's the riddle we haven't solved yet.
Where did you imagine this music being played when you made it?
Here's the funny thing about clipping is like we think all of these are bangers. Like when it's just the 3 of us alone in the studio, like I absolutely imagine these coming out of club speakers, almost every song we've ever made, and then the world proves that to be untrue. But but like in the sort of big like misunderstanding of this band is that we totally think we're just making club tracks most of the time.
And some of them do hit really hard, even though they're really weird. I mean, to me, this track, like, it really, like, it's like threading. It's the needle I always want to thread when we're making clipping songs, right? That it's like a cool conceptual idea that's immediately apparent based on, like, the process we've used. Yet it's incredibly simple feeling, even though the execution has to be really complex to communicate this really simple idea. And it's like, and it's also like like it sounds like a song, like the beats hit hard and it feels like a club track when it really takes off, you know.
It always has a great concept behind it. You can always find something really interesting to think about in the process. And for all you classical music people out there, just FYI, William, very high concept. He studied with Susan McClary. All of my classical music feminists out there know who that is. Shout out. But yeah, when you guys first started, that was one of the things that I was like super excited about, was just Jonathan's level of production, plus Williams and conceptual thinking, plus just like A+ all-star talent, like in David. It's so good.
And David's pretty good too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he could stay.
I mean, we just need.
I'm just the one who can. I'm the one who can put up with them.
That is true.
largely true.
So that's that. There's that kick drum. There's this snare drum that has this like real metallic kind of chirp to it. Which is a module I don't have anymore. That's another modular sound. I think that was a noise engineering drum module prototype that I was borrowing from our friend Derek.
Oh yeah, absolutely, that was.
I lose track of their model names because they are so fanciful. But
Wasn't Basilisk?
No, that's the one I have still. The Laqualic, the LIP, I think, Laqualic Iteritas something or other.
Doesn't matter.
Very silly name.
Derek Estrada, also known as Basek, lent us a thing that we made that with.
Beautiful, wonderful module that I've always just wanted to get now that it actually came out, but haven't for whatever reason. And it made this snare drum, and it's a beautiful, beautiful sounding thing. I think it really is just like gate into that module, and then like maybe we turned some knobs on it as it went or something. I can't remember.
We're clearly open. Like the decay time is changing.
It's changing, and it's also running through a delay with like changing delay times. Just based on what was in my studio at the time, I would guess that was a make noise Echophone, but I don't remember. We're doing something there. I can't really remember. Hi-hat. That could be almost anything.
Literally just a click. Square wave.
We do that a lot.
Yeah, that's another like really standard like sound for us, is just like the shortest possible envelope on something to just sound like popping speakers or like DC offset pops or something.
I mean, yeah, and so what should be said is the sort of the translation of that Jonathan's initial idea of David rapping over stuff coming out of cars as they pass was sort of narrowed in this attempt to do a song with a chat, where we very specifically tried to make, well, what is our take on like a late 90s Memphis rap tape?
Yeah.
Like, how do we make a track like that sounds like that with the tools we use, with the techniques we understand in our upbringing, but make something that we feel like fits into that world, to be like, well, what do we, like, how do we make that with what we already do? So I think that's what we're hearing in this last section, is like, what are clipping versions of the sounds that, that can not approximate, but just pay homage to like that kind of DJ Paul and Juicy J production, or DJ Squeaky, or all those sort of old.
The real like value of starting with a feature like we do whenever we work with features, which is that like it's a really good focusing agent for us to sort of pour all of our kind of various obsessions into. If we're working with somebody, it's probably because we totally love what they do. And so we spend a lot of time obsessing over how to figure out, because you don't really give people instructions when you send them rap songs to rap over. So we kind of spend a lot of time trying to figure out, well, what's the framework that is most likely to get this rapper to do the thing we love that they do? And pretty much every time it's worked out great, like almost better than we could have hoped for. Like it's true. What they have sent back, regardless of sort of how kind of weird conceptually it is, the thing that comes back is like, yes, that's the thing. That's the thing that we love, that like that's your superpower that we were hoping you would let us use briefly.
we're getting better at that. It felt like maybe at first, like, or at least like I know in my own life, like that's just like learning to work with collaborators like over time. It's like I want you to do that exact thing that you do, and sort of giving them that prompt without having to say that is a hard thing to learn. I don't know. I also can't like I have no advice for how to learn that. It's just like we see now, you know. Basically, the only other sound in this is this one stem.
It's because it's all through the biscuit.
That contains two sounds, which contains both that like melody and the sort of pad sound. Oh, I guess we're also hearing the dry pads. The dry pads are just like a sustained pad from the Prophet 5, which I'm lucky enough to have. There, though it.
You muted yourself. There you
I muted myself. How did I do that?
I did it on accident.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
go. Sabotage.
The Prophet.
Mary Claire says Jonathan's done talking.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my own little performance now.
Yeah. Yeah, the Prophet recently stopped turning on. I'm very sad about it. But it made this pad sound.
But the good thing is that there's one guy in Oakland that repairs Prophet 5s, and he's very strange and has a lot of like an unsettling amount of exotic birds in his living room.
What's his name? I might know him.
I don't think we should say
Okay, all right. Yeah.
We could.
on the internet.
He repaired this and got it working beautifully, and put the MIDI interface in it. Greg Montalbano, right? Is that his name? Yeah. There's a few people around still. I don't. What's weird is that it doesn't power on, but the MIDI interface still works. So, which basically means that it's just the world's most expensive and worst MIDI controller.
The synthesizer doesn't work, but you push the keys and something happens. Yeah.
You send out MIDI with no velocity, and also most of them like re-trigger and are really super like inconsistent because it's a synth from the 70s. So yeah. Anyway, I need to get that fixed. Anyway, it's that pad, and then actually that main melody sound, this guy. That melody sound is actually just a piano. Like we don't usually use presets, but in this case, we were probably mocking things up with cheap sounds or like preset sounds. So this is just like a preset, like a piano. I wonder which one it is. It's probably piano, but no, it's the 8DO 1928 grand piano, which is what I use for my like just default piano sound if I'm writing a film score or something. So it's that sound.
With some spooky shit on it.
Run through some reverbs and then into the auto biscuit. It's summed with the pads and run into the auto biscuit. I don't know if you can hear the pad underneath that. It's pretty subtle, but the biscuit is this little guy, which I'm lucky enough to have. They were only made for a short time, and it's just like an 8-bit bit crusher and sample rate reducer with like a built-in filter and a built-in delay and some movement and some modulation. I bought it for a video game score project that actually didn't end up happening. I was working for a composer who wanted to make a bunch of like really aggressive 8-bit sounds, and I think Big City Music had one of these in stock, and so I just went over there and I was like, well, if this happens, I'm going to really want this thing. And if it doesn't happen, I can return it. And then I played with it for a few days, and I have not returned it, obviously.
Sorry, I'm back. I will say There are like 100 fire trucks in front of my apartment building right now. So if you hear a lot of sirens,
Okay.
I will mute my microphone and hope I don't catch fire or whatever.
Yeah, you can't leave. Whatever happens, you can't leave till the end of this class. So just
Or you're going to get an F.
remember what's important right now.
Hey, I just realized Chris Flieger is with us.
How are you?
Chris Flieger.
How's it going? I'm sitting in the van. I have a driver credit on this track.
True. So yeah, so we did invite Christopher Flieger to join us on this Zoom call because in order to record these cars driving by playing songs that we made, we enlisted Christopher Flieger to drive his giant van, which he is currently sitting in, and blast the songs out the windows on a very quiet country road so that we could record them with as little background noise as possible, but still actually get the sound of not fake it, to get the honest sound of a car playing the track driving by, as opposed to doing it with EQ and filters and field recordings that we already had. So we did actually go out, and Christopher did just play the songs as loud as possible out of his van.
Oh yeah, here we go. So, haven't opened these sessions in a long time, obviously. So, oh, actually, it's probably out here, isn't it? Let me relink some files, but fumble 02 dot wave. Maybe it doesn't matter. Oh, there it is. Jesus. Okay. Doesn't matter. All these files have moved around. My whole studio has been rearranged since we made this track. But so we. Well, I don't know where the original sessions are actually, but we made 5 more beats because we thought 5 more.
I think so.
A couple didn't make it into the track. So
I'm trying to think of the logic. I think we wanted to hear 3 cars pass in the.
We tried it. Yeah, we wanted it to be 6. We wanted it to be 6 beats. So before we decided for one of the beats that you heard from the car to be the beat for the third verse, we were going to have 6 completely different beats. We're going to have 3 pass-bys per verse. And that new beat that LeChat raps over was going to be something you hadn't heard before. But then we decided it was more ominous if we heard her pass as if she passed in the first 2 verses and drove by and missed him while he was running or hiding. But then the third verse, we're actually sitting in her car with her while she's describing what she's going to do to him.
So we made these additional 5 beats in the same tempo and the same key with the same kind of feel, but as if they were other Memphis rap songs. I don't know. I can play a little bit of some of those.
Play the snippets.
And that's one we did use, right?
I think we did use that one. Yeah, that they don't do very much. They're kind of just like 4-bar phrases that trade off. And we kind of made a rule that we were going to make them as fast as we possibly could, with like everything kind of played live, like no quantization, and like just like sequencing straight in like old drum machine. So that's an 808, a real 808 sequenced on it, and just like keys played over the top, like playing. I think the bass is the SH-101. Here's this one.
And this was not used.
That shit's hard though.
Yeah, that was our Cypress. That was our fake Cypress Hill beat.
Yeah.
I was so excited that I discovered that that sample in "Insane in the Brain" is a horse. A horse whinny.
The horse whinny.
Yeah, that's a horse. So I was making a lot of beats with horse whinnies in them.
From Jonathan's horse whinny period.
Yeah, I have a sampler instrument called Cypress Horse. Very proud of.
Now I'm going to hear horse whinnies like everybody's final project at the end.
Yeah. It's this sound. It's a horse. There's another one. They're really simple. They all kind of have the same vibe, a little bit. That's definitely the best one.
Yeah, that one's like I wish we just made that song.
Yeah, it is in the final version of the.
Yeah, that one's definitely in there.
But we could make that song still. Bass lines are even more similar than I remembered. It's a little shameful, but they were designed to.
They're in the same tempo and they're in the same key. They've got it
in the same world,
and they're all supposed to sound like DJ Paul made them in 1998. So like,
and then
pretty narrow.
And then that's the actual third verse of the song.
I can't remember, like in the version that I wrote to first, was it one of those? Was it clicks?
No,
I can't remember.
No, it was the max patch, the little stuttery max patch cut up sound was the slot, which I remember I insisted on because I had so little faith in this idea ever actually communicating that I suggested we do that so that it was basically a metronome for you to write to.
Right.
Let me open that. I have that max patch running in the background here too, so I can show that.
So if you're still on this live stream and for the song
just us
as we played it at the beginning, there is like a sort of a spine to the song that even through the verses, there's this little stuttering field recording that cuts on tempo, and that was a patch Jonathan wrote many years ago that we use all the time, and maybe we shouldn't say how often we use it because it always manages to sound different in every song, and it doesn't.
Less. We use it less and less. It's on like half of Mid City, and then like only a couple of things on.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like less and less until I think this is the only track it's on. There Existed, right?
That's true, but it's then on Drought.
Oh yeah.
From a month after that. So it does appear, and it's on the only song we released in between The Deep and There Existed whatever the last one's called, There Existed an Addiction to Blood. Yeah, because it's on the Rick and Morty song. No, anyway, the point is.
Right. Oh, right. It's on the record. Okay, we do use it a lot. Well,
here, Jonathan will show you what it does, but this was.
Well, so we made this recording, if I can find it. Basically, I made it as a way of generating a lot of like material really quickly, because in the very beginning of clipping, we had this rule that we weren't allowed to use melodic material, that we weren't allowed to use like notes or melodies or harmonies, which we clearly abandoned like almost immediately.
Almost immediately. I
think song number 2 contains melodies, But we were interested in this idea of like rhythms that weren't beats, right? That were like catchy and discernible, but didn't have like drum sounds or melodies in them.
They did the thing that a melody would do, like get in your ear. Like that's the thing you'll remember is this pattern. But like,
I think our song About That probably does it sort of the best. Or like at least if that was like the real like, I mean, even though there are chords in a bass line in that one,
yeah,
but, like all of the other sounds are like cassettes, and it's these like sort of off kilter loops cut out of all these sounds. So that's something we return to a lot, and I made this Max patch to cut up raw recordings to do that. So Bill took his cassette recorder just out in front of my apartment here and just walked around on the street and made this recording.
Okay. I don't know that we need to hear it, because what I did was I ran as fast as I could and as hard as I could, breathing into the thing.
I think we do need to hear
Which
it.
is a little embarrassing.
Yeah, you're probably
Into the
let this roll for a bit.
That's the good part, is I did run up to the dogs a block away and stick the microphone in and have the dogs bark at me.
I'm generally thrilled anytime somebody who's not me in clipping has to run.
Yeah.
I feel like I am always running in this band. And
We have made you run in a lot of videos.
Yeah. It's not me.
Like walk on treadmills.
Yeah.
So we had that recording, and then the Max patch that I made, well, it looks like this now. It didn't used to look like this. But basically, I wanted to be able to make, to drop a file in and then have a bunch of different, in this case, 16-step. These are all step sequencers. If you can see that, if I zoom in, you can zoom in. That modulate different parameters that are really easy to just like draw these sequences in, and then either synced with a MIDI clock or just running on its own, I can determine what note length these steps will play back. So if I reset it and I load that cassette fumble file into it and I hit go, so that's making a loop where each one of these steps represents an eighth note, and my tempo is whatever I've set the global transport to in Max, which, since I was playing with this, oh, it's 120. So if I set it to the length to the tempo of the song, 74. And I did have this version of the patch doesn't have a MIDI sync input, but I have made versions with MIDI sync input that we can sort of play live. But usually, honestly, I just like set the tempo to the same tempo as my Logic session and just record the output of it and then cut it up later because we're going to do that anyway. So at 74, if I set all of these start, like, so this one says start, right? So this is the start time of each slice. And if I set those all to the same place, so those are eighth notes at 74 beats per minute. And then I can change the length of those. I have this little ratchet slider that will re-trigger multiple times per step. And then like an amplitude and an attack and release.
That's awesome.
And the really fun part, and like a pitch, right? So, of course, the real fun is to just randomize the whole thing. And you can immediately hear how that's just like an endless source of material, right? Because it could be any recording. And so for like for this file, probably, I mean, it's not, I don't remember what I did, and you can see in my original Logic session I have like a ton of these cassette fumble cuts back here that are just the raw material of us playing around with that patch that we would then went back and edited into these little right. So that sounds to me like I was triggering it at quarter notes. And the length was pretty short, and I was doing a lot of like ratcheting stuff.
Yeah. So like standard with this is we'll generate some sort of a file or load in some sort of a audio file to the patch, and Jonathan will just sort of improvise on it and record the output on it for like a long time. So that's what he was showing at the end of this session, is that we then go through him clicking around and making little bits and pick a section and we're like, oh, we can loop that. That's a really good rhythmic idea. And we grab that and loop it. And then we say, oh, you know, I don't even know. I mean, I think it probably, we're like, okay, this is like a 4-bar section that we're going to grab and we're going to repeat that for this whole verse, or like maybe the first half of the verse and it changes in the second half of the verse or something like that.
Yeah, I think I even got it pretty close right now. Like,
do you do you filter that as like one thing once you put it into your draw and like spread it out like stereo wise?
Yeah, I mean, you can see here it is on a track, and I mean, there's just a channel strip on it, like with a little bit of a limiter and some EQ, and I'm not doing any automation to it at all. I'm just taking little bits.
Oh, you can see how many times it's repeated and where a new chunk starts.
And you guys like collectively decide what chunks are going in the track? How is that decision made?
Yeah.
We just listen to them and find which ones we think sound cool.
Oh, that's cool.
We're not particularly precious, you know, just like, oh, that bit works. And then like often I'll go in and like we can like micro edit them too. And none of what you're hearing even really ended up in the song, right? Because we almost entirely cut them out by the end of it. Like when we went back and actually recorded the car buys, we went back and took out most of the max patch.
Yeah, exactly. So those were almost like a placeholder based on like a I don't know, a lack of faith that there would be enough material to hold the thing together.
Because it just feels weird to turn in a verse, to turn in a beat to David, right, with 16 bars of silence and then a hook.
You're like, you rap at this part. Yeah, there's nothing there. Just rap. Just go. Just rap.
It's not necessarily uncommon for us, but it was nice to. I've spent a fair amount of time rapping to a click, and then like we'll get the material in, and then I'll go back and be like, oh, there are like choices to make here.
So
after we finish it,
like what kind of choices are at that point? Like what kind of choices get made?
Which you mean like after going back, like after the song's recorded? It's usually that's kind of like for me the most intensive part, is because it's usually all three of us in the room and I'm just doing takes, and then we're talking about, oh well, this, I'll be like, well, you know, there's a sort of difficult balance with what we do, because it's never me, and so there's no first person at all, and so like what are the things that are okay to do? Like what are the vocal rappy things that are okay to do? You know, like basically how much personality can you give a song that doesn't have a person, right? So like that's a line we're always walking, where I'm usually like, what if I sing this part? And Bill's like, no. And and then like we reach some middle ground where it's like, well, maybe I'll like sing, but we'll bury it and I'll speak over the top, or like, you know, or like, if there's like a rhythmic trick that's like referencing something that is often done in one of the songs that we're referencing, that you ain't scared, is you? Right? I did the scratch of that, but we always knew that we wanted LeChat to come back and do that because that's like something we stole from her, but that's like very...
It's like motivic device.
That's a reference to a song of hers from her album Murder, She Wrote, where her hook is, you ain't mad, is you?
So like things like that, if I do them on a song, it's because we're paying homage to something that the song is referencing. And so like there's this sort of the final recording phase for me is sort of all of us figuring out what that is, like piecing together the performance of the verse.
Well, like, so here's an older version of the song, because you also wrote verse 2 first on this one.
Yeah.
Where you were doing a totally different vocal performance style as well.
We have to.
And I think the like...
Bill hates this because it's real activated.
Wait, why do you hate it?
Because it's real performy. Usually I want to do something that is like really performy, and Bill's like the one forcing us to pull it back, and then where we end up in the middle is probably right.
Yeah.
But
I remember this particularly as an instance where I wasn't sure and I wasn't crazy about the vocal performance choice, but I was like, Bill's gonna put a stop to this before I ever need to like...
Yeah, there's no reason for you to try that.
Are you just trying to like keep it in a really specific, like, why? What's the reasoning behind Bill's distaste for performy takes?
Well, it's not for performy takes, or it's not necessarily, that's one way it manifests. But I do get the job of limiting some of the band's sillier ideas.
Oh, you're that guy. You're like the voice of reason guy.
Yeah.
I think a band that was just me and Jonathan would be
one song like that. If I recall, you made gorilla noises in it.
Oh yeah.
It's got 400 tracks of David making monkey noises. Is what they made without me.
Yeah,
it's a true story. It's a true story. But
it's also a Battlestar Galactica remix.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everybody in this band serves their purpose. You know, we all do the thing that we do. But yeah, Bill's job is to sort of rein it in a lot of the time.
But since we have Christopher here and his face is prominent in the center of our screen.
Oh,
you're just trying to get out of hearing this old version.
oh yeah.
Oh crap! All right, we can listen.
Because this is the version where the hook was lined up differently too, right? We scooted the whole hook.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Because it sounded too
much like that originally.
It was too much.
It was too close up a reference. There was a Project Pat song that sounded too much like.
Ho, get it right. Get out of sight.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like Slob on My Knob. Is what
Slob on My Knob is.
If you're familiar with the 86 Mafia classic Slob on My Knob.
It sounds so much like that. And then I just thought, we all thought it was cooler to hear it.
That's right.
But you can play a little bit of the verse. It's like super, it's like a one-man show. It's not good.
I was just gonna A/B with where the hook ended up.
Ho, get it right. Get out of sight. She on the street. Run for your life.
And that, because we do that a lot too, where we're like, well, we have this other rhythmic idea and we'll cut it up and make it on the computer, and then you have to learn it and
redo it. Yeah.
Here's the old verse.
Turns into an alley quick, just a wall that's full of bricks, with a dirty mattress leaning up against it, smell like piss. Big green dumpster to the right, color rusted, look like wine. Lid is heavy, but it's creaking open, that'll do just fine.
It's just like...
What's up?
Is it like, that was like the original?
Yeah.
That's the first demo, yeah.
Okay.
I
liked it.
It's really fine. It's just a song for a different band. Like it's, you know what I'm saying? Like that's actually part of the process here. Is like a lot of the things I think would work in another context, but like when you line that up with everything else that happened on this album, like it would not have worked.
Well, and like trying to get it in like a very specific stylistic place.
And like something about this, like because we avoid the use of first person in the lyrics, in the lyric writing of this band, and something about this, like putting actual fear in David's voice somehow makes it in first person, even though he never says the word I. And the whole concept of this song is already kind of very first person-y feeling, right? That she's chasing him and that he's, you know, it feels like you're being followed and being chased. And so there was just like one too many layers of like of putting the self back into this music, which we have sort of decided to remove.
It kind of like took away from the narrative.
Yeah, it makes it harder to follow. It makes it a little less like a rap song and a little more like a performance piece. Whereas like, which is an interesting thing that I find with this project, whereas like, because a lot of non-clipping rap songs like require so much more performance of the situation, right? Or like, there's a lot more vocal modulation generally in rap music that we, like oftentimes when I try it with our stuff, it doesn't end up working because it puts a lot of self into a thing. And because like we're often referencing something that we are very much not. And there's this like assumed authenticity with rap music that you're always combating in this band. So like, you know, it comes off as fake. Whereas like, if it were a different project.
Yeah, this is all like everything we're doing is an exercise in sort of distancing. Like the idea that every single rap song you've ever heard is apparently an embellished memoir, right? It's all a true story about this person's life. When they say, I did this, they mean it. And you don't necessarily believe them, but it's like James Frey's Millions of Little Pieces or some shit like that. Whereas like our songs are exclusively supposed to be novels. Like no one thinks Philip Roth does the things he said. Like that's not his life story. We're apparently the only rap group that's like, we're writing stories. These are fake. We know they're fake. And they're a third person as a result of that.
Great. Cool. Thank you for explaining that to me. Super interesting.
Yeah, we made a version then to send to LeChat that mocked up the drive-by idea. So I like dragged in car drive-by sounds and we just faded up and down beats underneath David's.
Coming after you, but now they said she gon' get you right. They said she got all the juice. They said keep her happy though, what she. Now you sprinting by that fish market trying to make it to summer. The blood in the ears is drumming, the heart is a cable jumper. The brain is flipping the language, the lungs are probably toast. But everybody who ever stopped running is now a ghost. You ain't seen them headlights in a minute, so it might be cool. Night is falling gently and it ain't no one in sight for you. Stop tripping, stop tripping.
So that's totally faked.
Yeah, and that would have probably been enough for 99.9% of any other artists. But this is where Christopher Flieger comes in.
What I think is so remarkable is the modulation you did to the tempo to match the Doppler effect.
And so
as a result, the thing we had to do.
Because that was a conversation we had early on, is like, are we going to have to account for Doppler effect, right? Like, because as the van approaches and then passes the microphone, the waves are going to get longer or shorter, and the pitch is going to change and the tempo is going to change of the music that's coming out of the van. And I was always like, the van is going to be creeping. It's going to be so slow and so subtle that we're not going to have to worry about it, right? And then so we went out and recorded a bunch and discovered that that was not true at all.
It absolutely sped up and slowed down and messed us up completely.
We enlisted Flieger because because he's an incredible recordist and we would do a lot of work with him. And he's just one of my favorite people to work with on any project. But
yeah, he's definitely our go-to helper in any audio situation. He's the other person.
Yeah.
Whenever we have some dumb idea that we can't achieve, just the three of us.
I can't even like begin to list the number of insane projects that we've put you on. Like we picked up that piano together and went.
Oh, in the same van.
He's also got a really big van.
That sentence kind of began with me saying the reason we called Christopher Flieger is because he's got this great van.
It also helped me move like 3 months ago. It was great.
How reductive this is. You're more than a fan.
Got me my first apartment in San Francisco. I said Christopher Flieger got me my first apartment in San Francisco, actually.
How'd that work out?
So
Great.
if the students are still paying attention, your dean needs to live with that guy.
Wow. So we went out 3 times. The first time, the tragic outing. I think I have some video from it. The first time we went up into the mountains, like sort of on the way to Arrowhead. Yeah, here's some video from that outing. And it kind of looks like you, or no, I'm sorry, this is the second time we went out. The first time was in Vernon.
Yeah. Which was way too loud.
Which I had no video from, but because we wanted it to sound like a city, like these cars were passing in cities. So
oh my God, that first time was in Vernon in the middle of the night. That's right. And we couldn't get anywhere that wasn't like factories running all
super
night.
Loud industrial
recording. It was just like insane buzzing, clanging all night. There's nowhere in Los Angeles that's quiet for even a second, it turns out.
Yeah, we talked about having to pitch this to the key of the track. That's true.
Yeah.
Which sounds like cool, but it's so loud. That
4 in the morning in what we thought was the quietest part of Los Angeles, and it's definitely not. We're just not quiet. Like, I'd be the quietest part of Los Angeles.
So that didn't work. So we went up into the hills by Arrowhead. This is my recording rig. I was stationed on the side of the road, and Bill and Christopher were in the band. Christopher was driving, and Bill was manning playback, which we also did from a laptop in Logic, with everything split out into stems from the tracks, because I just knew, like, when we got out there that, like, on the side of the road, I'd be like all I'm hearing is kick drum. You got to turn up the hi-hats and turn down the kick drum, or some changes, which I feel like we did a lot of tweaks actually.
Yeah, you would have to text me while we were driving by to be like, and I was like mixing the beat for what you were hearing outside.
Put that horse up, yeah.
More horse.
More horse. Not getting the horse on the side of the
road. At some point, the van will drive by here, but this was I think this stuff sounded really good. This was the day that we discovered a horrible bug in the Sound Devices Mix Pre firmware, and I returned home to my studio discovering that actually we hadn't recorded anything. So that was a day of recording that was totally lost. Where's the band?
Like the only time we've ever like really lost anything, though. So
yeah, it really is.
Oh, he's coming.
Here it is. That stuff sounded really good.
It was worth it.
Really.
I still have the folder of files. It generated all of these 6 kilobyte files.
And Sound Devices made the update just because of you.
Yes.
Emailing them.
In the later version of the because I complained about it. I found somebody else who'd have the same problem. It was something about, like, if you had changed the time and the date and had pre-roll enabled and then hadn't restarted the device since you'd changed the time and the date, it would not record in the audio. And it was true that day I was like, oh yeah, the last recordings I made were on the East Coast or somewhere, and I changed the time to be the current time in the device right before.
Oh, so the point is literally every production sound person in cinema should thank our band for pointing out that the one tool they all goddamn use needed this firmware update for this stupid bug.
Anyway.
All those film sound people who are clearly watching this right now.
I mean, clearly it didn't affect that many people, because not that many people were complaining about it.
It hadn't come up.
It was me and this other guy. So then we went back out, and we went out to the desert this time. We kind of took a circuitous route back up to the mountains, because the thing about the mountains was there were so many cars in between every pass, and the turns were really tight that it felt unsafe to go as slow as we needed to get the passes. We'd originally picked the mountains because we wanted to hear the sound bouncing off of things as if they were buildings, right, in a city. So we wanted to hear like kind of echoes and reflections, but
and we also didn't think that if we were on if we were in a desert with nothing to block the sound, if we're just totally flat with nothing there, we would hear the pass by for so long that we couldn't get a short recording of the by, because we would get we would hear it a mile away as it drove up, right?
And so on our way to the mountains the second time, we took sort of a circuitous route, like by Palmdale, like through the desert. Palmdale being a really remarkable place to go recording because there's fucking nothing out there. Christopher and I have done a lot of other vehicle recordings and things out there, like out by California City.
It's empty.
It's wild out there. So on our way, we found this place. No, sorry, that's the same recording. This was my view from the side of the road. So, and it was really silent, and we were like basically the only people on the road. And so here's my folder of recordings from that day. You can see I pressed record 56 times that day. And then the little blue ones here are the ones that I determined to be good. And that's where we pulled our actual pass-bys from. Oh, that one's in the song, for sure. That little rev at the end.
Yeah.
And that, because we were the only ones out there, and it was a nice day, and it was quiet, and everything was working, we really could take our time. And, we'd do a pass, and I'd call and be like, hey, what if you, go real slow when you're right by me, and then speed up really fast right at the end of it, and things did little sort of performance things like that, and it felt totally safe. And
because there weren't a bunch of, architectural features around us. I remember I'm also riding the volume artificially going by. So it's starts quieter, and as I'm watching you approach, I'm easing up the volume. So we sort of artificially
exaggerated what was actually
the volume on the pass bands, yeah.
And we should point out that it's not just the stock sound system in Christopher's van.
Oh yeah, we took your sub from your studio, ran it off this generator.
Yeah.
1 kilowatt-hour generator. Put it right up to the window and made it rattle.
We have some video from inside the van, too.
I want you to go 20 miles per hour on this one. When you...
No, go for it. I can play it without sound.
Oh, no. Just
There's me on the side.
You could probably take our text. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, it was so loud in there. You guys were wearing gunshot hearing protection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely.
Oh, it's good with audio. And that acceleration, that turn, that's all in the score. You just need to decipher, and if you just take our text messages, you could write a score on how to recreate this.
So wait, for those at home following along, what exactly were the steps here?
Starting from where? So we made a song.
Okay.
We made 5 other songs.
Okay.
To be played out of a van while driving slowly by microphones, and then mixed into the original song.
Beautiful.
That's as simple as it gets, I think, right? Yeah.
Then let me know if this is jumping ahead, but after you had these recordings, you had David redo the rep to the meter of the pass-bys.
Okay, so we then assembled it. And at this point, I think I had already printed all of my stems out of Logic for our mixer to mix the song. So I moved to Pro Tools to assemble it because I'd like dealing with audio better in Pro Tools and MIDI better in Logic. That's the session LeChat sent back to us. LeChat and her engineer also they cut up our beat a bunch under her verse to add all these dropouts and stutters and things that were really cool. So we replicated them.
We just remade them from the original. They were definitely the right choice.
So where is shit? Diggs, you and I when it was it yesterday or the day before, we found April 1 at 6:02 p.m. That sounds about right.
Sounds right.
We found a version of the session before I had made the tempo map with the dropped in pass-bys, because this whole time we were thinking that we wouldn't have to worry about Doppler effect, that I could just pick the moment of the beat where you heard it the loudest out of the car and line that up with the grid in the software, and it would just work, right? And because you'd be rapping to a grid, we'd hear the song for a second, then you would line up for a second, and then it would drift away, and it would be fine. Who would care, right? But that ended up sounding so here are the actual car buys, because by this point we had realized that hearing 6 different beats was way too many, that hearing 3 beats per verse was way too much, and hearing 6 different songs was way too much also. So we ended up just using 2 of our original beats, and then hearing the beat that we made for the track twice, and then hearing 2 per verse, if that makes sense. So it was 4 drive-bys total. 2
instead of 6. And it was, you heard 1 beat twice, and it was the one from the end. Yeah. I don't know if I made that any clearer by trying to, worse.
So that there are only 4 drive-bys. They're on this yellow track here, and then here's the reference of Diggs's original verse here, and I feel I'm gonna play this one and see if it's
the blood in the ears is drumming, the heart is a cable jumper, the brain is flipping, the language, the lungs are probably toast, but everybody who ever stopped running is now a ghost. You ain't seen them headlights in a minute, so it might be bad. Night is fine.
It's the low frequency stuff is what really what the clock is, and you hear that so far on either side of it that it really starts to drift. I feel like maybe these are even worse.
Freaking open, that'll do just fine. Bags of trash with bites took out. Coffee grounds that spilling down. Duck and slam the lid closed. Damn, that metal echo hella loud. Quiet, except the plastic swish with every tiny mover.
It's super offbeat now.
Yeah, it doesn't communicate at all because of the Doppler, which we assumed we wouldn't have to worry about.
Which we assumed we wouldn't hear at all, right? Because we were going so slow and it's so brief and whatever. So then I had to make...
This shit is brilliant right here.
So then I had to make a tempo map, which I did which is so much easier to do in Pro Tools than anything else, I think. So just by going in and you can, what is it, Command I or something, you identify beat and you say to Pro Tools, hey, this chunk of audio is bar 16 beat 3, and just make it work. Right, and so I would sit and I would go through the waveforms here, and I just, every time I feel like I would hear a beat, I would put the marker there and I would make a beat. Where's my click? I'll turn on my click here, and then you can hear the click track. Here, I'll start it back. So and once we'd gotten that sitting pretty well, then I just converted Diggs's original reference track to to whatever it is to be in Tix and used Liquid Audio to time stretch it to that.
Fingers never. You gon' get it now. They said she gon' get you right. They said she got all the juice. They said keep her happy though, what she be coming at.
And even though he's like speeding up and slowing down now, he's right on that car driving in a weird way, like adds this cool like sort of dramatic push and pull to it. So this was a really good excuse to make him redo it, not in the character voice anyway, because we had to re-record it. So I think that's the tactic we used, right? Well, we gotta redo it anyway, so why don't we just try a straight one and see if we like that, right?
Yeah, we did a bunch of different takes of it,
Yeah.
like in that studio in New York. At this point I was doing a play in New York, and so like and we had to finish this album, so I made them come out for a week, and we would like record all morning until like my call time, and then I would go to a show, and then we'd repeat the next morning. But yeah, this was one of those we redid there.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never rapped to a moving click before. That was the first for me. But it was cool.
Yeah.
Weirdly subtle, you know, like it just sounds kind of wrong when the click is not moving, but because everything is moving together, it ends up being actually fairly subtle, I think, in the final track. You know, and we're talking about like this is a move from 73.7 through 76 back to 74. Like it's really not that huge of a motion, you know.
Well, it's really interesting when you hear it against a pulse, like the click itself, and then when you take it away, it becomes much more obvious. What's happening.
And Diggs, when you were recording this, were you fed just the click, or did you have the altered
no, I had the whole
underneath
thing, I think. Yeah. I think we did it.
Like, I think we did.
No, we did. You heard the car buys, or at least Jonathan and I in the studio were hearing the car buys.
Yeah, no, I had the car buys in there. Because like that's all that like affects performance too. Like I can record it just a click, and like we do that sometimes when it's too crazy for me to find. But like generally speaking, like the music is gonna help. You want to be rapping to whatever is actually gonna be there, because it changes what your voice is.
Well, and I think when we started this band, we assumed that we would always have to give you like really distinct clicks.
Yeah.
And we even, for a handful of songs, were making like drum tracks that
you would take away.
We realized pretty quickly that we didn't actually need to do that at all. And I'm always amazed by how well you can follow some of these things with no click at all. This is one of the few times I think that we really needed that click in there. But usually we don't need it at all anymore.
I think you get the best results if I'm rapping to as close as possible to what the final product is going to be.
Yeah.
Just because you're always adjusting for what you hear, so it happens naturally even when we have like a pretty specific plan and I like know what I'm supposed to do. Once I hear something, it'll change it. So you might as well start with what you're going to use.
Totally.
How long ago did this question come into there's one question in the chat that said, can you talk about the process of making Drown from the Deep? Is that something we should address, or?
Sure, if you want. That comes from Jose. Should we let Jose in the chat for a second?
Well, but the question is like maybe we should.
Should we stop talking about this song now and talk about whatever you guys actually want to
Is there a last bit of this song that we haven't discussed?
Here's the very final session before I sent it off to Steve to mix, which has all of the elements in it. And because he mixes in Pro Tools, I think I just sent him this session. Yeah, I took like all the plugins out of it and just sent it to him as it is. So all of my stems from Logic, all of my tempo nonsense, the final takes of David with all of the playlists in case Steve wanted to change any of the edits or recomp any of the vocals or anything. And then LeChat's vocals, which, yeah.
He's referring to Steve Kaplan, the guy who mixes all of our music.
When life was different and we all used to have more time, we would like go do final vocal recordings at Steve's studio, and like these guys make me do a lot of takes. Steve would really make me do a lot of takes. You know what I'm saying? Like his ear is way better than any of ours, and he'll hear any little flub on any part of a word and have me do the whole verse again just to get that. So that's why Jonathan is
some
leaving.
classical music. We're a rap group where our mixing artist is like a film music classical guy. So he's the type of guy who can be like, hey, on that whole pass of that whole symphony, oboe number 2 was a little flat on one note. Do the whole fucking thing again.
The Tonmeister.
Yeah.
His ears are so good, and he makes everything sound so much better. Like, he's really responsible for the fidelity of the records. Like,
I've been giving you that credit all this time in my mind, Jonathan.
nah, it's just trash until it.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm happy to talk about any other tracks. Someone asked about Drought, but I don't know if Drought is that much more interesting because honestly, excuse me, I just ate a bunch of tacos. The only difference, Drought uses the same patch that we showed earlier. That is the.
I'm just tuning into the YouTube comments for the first time.
Oh Lord.
Tessa says, as a former oboe 2 living in Arizona, we do tend to be flat sometimes.
Wow.
Damn.
Just called out the oboe players.
I
Better watch your back.
did not mean to single out.
Clean it up.
Here's Drought. Here's the Drought session.
Yeah, we had a student ask for that.
Well, so what I would say is that we brought up Drought before because it uses the same patch, and instead of me running around outside with a cassette like a cassette dictaphone to my mouth while I was running, that sort of file loaded into that Max patch was Jonathan, myself, and Jonathan's wife Christina all dunking our heads into the bathtub and screaming like we were drowning.
This is probably worth a listen.
Cool.
Oh no, I'm sorry. This is a different file. That's though one of the other beat elements is made from a field recording I made of like walking in snow, which is what this is.
Yeah, that's what that is. That's one of the drum sounds.
Let me see if I can find that's Max cut-ups. That's
That
what
must be.
That's what it ended up being. But I'm looking for the original recording because that's probably very funny.
I don't know that we need to hear that.
Well, I might be able to find it. So
of the three of us nearly drowning ourselves.
You don't have any video of that part?
I don't think we do.
Thankfully, we did not shoot video of that.
I remember when you guys sent it to me though. It's like genuinely pretty scary. It's like a cool sounding.
I mean, when you know what it was, it's like pretty alarming.
I'm being like real free with my folder structures here. I hope.
Oh, that's some good file management right there.
Bathtub yelling. That sounds about right. Yeah.
No, open that one that says Jonathan Nudes.
Yeah. Some good audio of that. Yeah.
That nude audio, all that nude audio.
There was that time I had to take all my clothes off for a recording for Splendor and Misery, right? Of the body hitting the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was naked in my bathroom, throwing myself on the floor over and over again to get that.
To hear, you needed the fleshy thwap.
Yeah.
It wasn't sounding right otherwise.
I'm offended that I didn't get the call for that. I feel like I've fulfilled every other naked duty.
It's true. When we need someone to be naked for one of our projects, it's usually bigger.
That's very true.
Jesus. Is that Christina?
Yeah. One of the tracks in there, that's definitely Christina, my wife. One of the tracks in there is a hydrophone that really picking up the resonances of the bathtubs. You can like it's very, very pitched.
It rings at a very specific frequency, yeah.
I think we ended up retuning the recording so that that pitch was like the root note in the song.
Yeah, we did.
I'm sorry, that was very funny.
Can you do it less like specifically rhythmic?
The direction is so good.
Yeah, wait. What else we got?
Yeah. I like that these are called bathtub fun, you weirdo. It's the creepiest shit I've ever seen.
Any thoughts?
I'm sorry, I was listening to it. I'll let you know our thoughts.
All right.
It's for sure. Hours of this.
Yeah. I don't know what the, like the, are you hearing the ring of the tub a lot? Like, I don't know what.
Not as much on that one.
Okay. Should I use like something like that again?
Sure, I would say that's continuous.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Anyway.
And this, San Francisco
we can do this all
Conservatory
night,
music
folks.
students, this is how you make music.
Specifically
How you
rap
compose
songs.
songs, fucking apparently.
Anyway, so then we would take those recordings, throw them in that max patch, and end up with wherever they are in here. Max cuts. So we have little bits like that.
Watch y'all do y'all dance on top of the water. Watch y'all do y'all dance on top of the water. Watch y'all do y'all dance on top of the water. Watch y'all do y'all dance on top of the water. Watch. Slide. Wait.
This is another song of ours that doesn't actually have that much going on in it. It's like only a few elements. And more and more, I feel like our songs are getting, like our tracks are actually getting more and more minimal. Just like 3 sounds that are the right sounds, rather than like stacking tons of layers, which I feel like we used to do a little more. But
Are there more questions we should be?
Yeah,
doing?
there's
Sorry,
one right
question?
here. It says, could you talk about where you see overlap between the tactics of noise, industrial, and hip hop?
I mean,
I don't think,
I mean,
I think honestly, like, you know, I don't know, making music is making music. A lot of things overlap, and the problem with any of us answering that is, I think what we have revealed in most of this videos before is we have no fucking clue how anyone else makes hip hop. Like, or noise and experimental and industrial for that matter. I mean, you know, we do the things we do, but I would say that obviously there is a ton of overlap, just from, you know, a listener perspective, that I think we try to point to in our work. We don't ever claim to have invented anything. I feel like we are saying, we've always said we're part of a lineage, and that industrial and noise have always been a part of hip hop, and that we're not, we didn't like show up and try to like do something different because we were dissatisfied with how hip hop sounds. This is just just the type of music that we can make.
The way the three of us can make music together.
And we thought this was how we would contribute to hip hop in whatever way I mean, who knows if we're contributing or just doing our own fucking thing on the side. But the point being that like we don't think we invented anything. We're part of a lineage from the very beginning, through, you know, Bomb Squad and early Dr. Dre and Above the Law and Ultramagnetic MCs or whatever, and then all the way up until, you know, we're coming out after Project Blowed, Dialect, Anticon. You know, there's a history of people using weird sounds and conceptual processes to make hip hop, and I don't think we're any different than that. And you know,
I think also this project, like more than a lot of them, like relies on other things. We're referencing so heavily, so much in every song. Mm-hmm. So like, there's like, I think there's, you know, and what we end up with is something that sounds like us, but like every song starts with a conversation about some other thing. You know, so.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, we're the least autobiographical, the least like, oh, this is just what's in me, we're doing us kind of like artists. We're literally saying, okay, this one, there's a whole song on the next project that was like, hey, this Seagram song featuring Scarface, we're gonna make a spiritual sequel to that. But it's a song that, like, unless you're from the Bay and we're like hyper aware of things in 1998, you probably don't even remember this damn song. But it meant a lot to us.
I'm always interested about the paradox of that, of like in our attempt to just absolutely like make the least autobiographical music possible, we're also making, I think, the most honest music for who we are, because it's so much about our references and our taste, and it's, I mean, I think we have actually ended up accidentally making incredibly autobiographical music.
Yeah, but I think it's autobiographical in the way that like On Kawara paintings are autobiographical or something. Like it's like, or John Cage's Indeterminacy ends up being autobiographical, or it becomes, right? So, I mean, not that we have to get necessarily into this, but right, Cage, in sort of an attempt to kill the author and to use chance operations, right, ends up not revealing, or being that sort of what his values are come out in the music in a way that I think, according to my PhD advisor, was a version, Indeterminacy was for Cage a version of being in the closet, having a sort of a worry in modernism about like that your true soul is coming out in this expression of your music. And if you're trying to not be an out gay man in the 1930s, perhaps your response to that is to take your own choice out of it and roll some fucking dice. And I think we have a similar sort of system of trying to take ourselves out of this. We've not actually done so. We've just revealed what our values are and what is and isn't valuable to us in the music, with just a different layer on top of it. Like we haven't actually escaped authorship or biography or expression.
Well put.
Any more questions from? Oh, there's another question from online.
William is in the house.
What happened? What?
There's another question for you, David. What draws you to telling stories from other characters' perspectives? Since third person, and since aside from rapping, you're also an actor.
Oh yeah,
What draws you to telling other people's from other people's perspectives, except that was literally our assignment.
Cool.
That was
that was our assignment. I mean, like 3 songs in, we did like 3 songs with I statements, and then decided there was no I in clipping. And
well, but they were still fictional stories. They were
definitely fictional stories.
Life.
Yeah.
So then the problem was you were saying I, and we were like, well, that's not who you are, so that feels weird.
Well, and it's this thing that is particular to rap music in a lot of ways, right? We don't put those same assumptions on pop music, and we don't put those same assumptions necessarily on rock songs either, really. Like,
absolutely not. No one is worried that Johnny Cash actually shot a man in Reno just to watch him die, but at fucking Draco the Ruler's trial, every goddamn 6 months he gets retried in Los Angeles. They play his rap songs and his videos to a jury as if that shit's real, as if that shit's all like.
Yeah,
it's all clearly fiction, but for some reason rap gets scrutinized differently. So our sort of way of working around that, or our way of sort of illustrating the fictional nature of these songs, was to just remove the first person. And it still doesn't work. For years, like the bulk of response we got, like even like music criticism of the album was like, David is doing this on this song. It was always super frustrating. And we like, you know, took the, like our self-titled album, we like took the eyes out in hopes that's why that album's called CLPPNG, in hopes that like that would be a sort of clue as to the thing, and it didn't help.
It took more than a year for anyone to publicly say online that they noticed David never said I on that album.
But that's sort of neither here nor there. It doesn't really matter, other than that that is the reason I rap in third person a lot, is because that's the project. I also rap in second person a lot, and it also like forces me to come up with a lot of different ways to. And a big part of this band too is like, if we do this thing, is it still a rap song? And like some, you know, like when we listen back to it, does this still feel like a rap song? So if I'm like using some technique. Like Inside Out does a lot of just like, all those verses are just descriptions of different areas, either before or after a murder has happened, and like it's zooming in on minutia in the thing. The way like when I was writing that verse, it was sort of me like looking around a room or a scene and being like, oh, I want to talk about this glass that just like where ice cube is melted into it, or like you know, things like that. And it was sort of, that was a pretty early song for us in a lot of ways. So I, you know, when we came out of it, I was like, is this a rap song still? And it was, I think. But so a lot of those things were for us are like, well, we don't know that this works. We know Raekwon does it really well, but we don't know if it works. When we do it, then we'll try it out, or I'll be interested in trying a thing like that. And yeah, so far any song we put out is because we thought it worked. Sometimes the internet disagrees with us.
Also, Diggs, you're a really nice guy, which doesn't match the abrasiveness in some of the songs.
Yeah, it is.
If it was
helpful
in first
for us
person,
to remove my first person, because nobody would buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Jonathan, can you talk a little bit how your background in theater sound design facilitates the kind of like storytelling and like fictional like sense of place and time that you guys seem to like to create and be inspired by?
We all have theater degrees, and Bill and I studied sound design together at UCLA as undergrads, and then sort of overlapping in various ways as graduate students as well. Yeah, I mean, I used to think they were separate, right? I used to think that I made music and I also was a sound designer for theater, for plays. But I mean, in a very kind of like practical way, my practice making sound effects and doing field recordings and dealing with acoustic spaces yields ideas and material for clipping songs a lot. Mm-hmm. In ways that I don't think in previous music projects I had allowed myself to like to use that material and see the crossover between it. Like, would I really like know about Doppler effect and like know about the way that sort of sound and like the speed of sound interacts with a moving and a stationary source if I wasn't a theater sound designer? Would that be like on my brain all the time? I'm not sure, you know. And like just like pretty much every clipping song you can imagine has some field recording that I made for some theater or film project in it somewhere. Or like, I mean, like even as stupid as an example of like the main sound in our song Work Work is this metal thermos that was an opening night gift from a play I had just done, you know, like as us hitting that.
With tapping on the butt of it, and I'm rolling a ball bearing in it and stuff in Jonathan's closet.
I'm really learning as I get older to not compartmentalize the various work that I do, and that it's all part of like the same sort of world. And so I'm using synths and drum machines more in theater sound, you know, and I'm using my compositional techniques more in like making sound for plays. And I'm using, you know, Foley and theater sound making techniques and like and speaker placement techniques and like thinking about like system design in clipping songs more. There's a clipping beat I made ages ago that we never did anything with, where I like speakers sort of around my house all making different sounds, and I was just making a binaural recording of walking around through them.
Don't tell people that. We're still trying to finish that one.
Yeah,
figure out what to do.
We're gonna do a different version of that someday, right? But like, you know, and I had like a path that I would walk, and like it's like, oh, it's the hook, so I got to run downstairs and outside, and then come back in this many beats, and like, it never quite worked out. But like those kinds of ideas definitely come from like system design and delaying sound systems and things, you know.
No, we're going to have, we're opening a new building in August, and our department is going to live in that building. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to have an Atmos system in our tech hall. You guys are welcome to come and go to town. Meyer equipped Atmos system.
Steve Kaplan, who we mentioned, who mixes all of our records now, has an Atmos system in his home.
Whoa. Yeah, come on down.
There's more and more projects. That's the delivery format, and so you have to be able to work in it. So, and I've been doing a lot more, like in my theater work, I've been doing a lot more like ambisonic audio.
Well, and we did an installation at the museum.
That wave field installation.
With a wave field synthesis.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know about that.
Oh yeah, so we did in collaboration with Bobby McKelver, who's a good friend, who's another theater sound designer, who had he reverse engineered the wave field synthesis system that had been built at MPAC for a theater show, and now he just has it. If you know, do people know what wave field synthesis is, Mary Claire, in your?
About half of them probably do.
So it's, without being too technical, because also I can't, because I don't really understand it. It's a way of using hundreds of tiny little speakers that are spaced, that are very, very close together, to generate a wavefront that allows you to place sounds in 3 dimensions in relation to a listener, so that you can place a sound in space in such a way that it doesn't feel like it's coming out of the speakers, that it feels like it's coming from an invisible source somewhere in the room.
Yeah, Bobby hates the shorthand, which is that people say audio holograms, like the idea that because of a system of delays on these very close together speakers, you can say, hey, this sound is coming from right here in front of your face, and then it can move right here, and it can move right here, and move like. So it's
very
illusion. It's like an audio illusion that's incredibly compelling and satisfying when you experience it done well.
I don't seem to have archived all the pictures and videos I took of us actually setting that thing up.
I mean, I could text you some, but whatever. We've got like
just hold them up to your screen.
Yeah.
Oh, word.
Very high tech.
Sure, I could.
So we made our song "The Deep" was adapted into a novella by Rivers Solomon, which was then read as an audiobook by David. At the same time, I was like having conversations with Bobby about wave field synthesis. we were going to play a show at MassMocha in Massachusetts, which happens to be like 30 minutes from Bobby's house, where he lived, with this wavefield synthesis system. He said, "Oh, I really wish somebody would let me do an audiobook or a podcast through the wavefield as like a listening experience." And I said, "We're going to do a show at an art museum that you have a relationship with, that you live 30 minutes away from. Let's do the audiobook as a wavefield installation during that festival."
You cannot. Okay, this is not. I'm just. Also, my weird background is maybe.
Yeah, that's not going to help. It'll only recognize faces.
All right. Well, all right. I had a picture. It doesn't matter.
I would love to see it.
I'm not changing my background.
Oh, Fleeger's got one.
Something like that. So that strip, those are all 1-inch speakers on that. Oh. I'll get you some more.
That's true. Flieger was also there helping us.
Yeah,
This is how often we use Flieger. This is
Flieger
how
is
often
always
he
there.
collaborates with us. Is whenever we need any help. This is our guy.
So we made a version of one of the chapters from The Deep that was spatialized in wavefield, sort of as a proof of concept, with the idea that we could maybe turn the whole book into something later. We haven't. Bobby went and did this selfish act of having children that seems to occupy a bunch of his time. So he has no time for us and our kooky projects anymore.
But yeah, there's those are all little 1-inch speakers in that line along the wall.
What was the sound? Just one single sound source?
So no, it was David reading the chapter, and then Christopher and I basically sound designed and scored the whole chapter. It was like 25 minutes long or something, 20 minutes long maybe.
Yeah.
With the intent of doing the whole audiobook, and in fact I did get most of the way through the whole audiobook, but didn't finish for a variety of reasons. We don't need to get into, but
I mean, who's listening to this? Who at Simon and Schuster is going to hear our hot take about how they fired our friend?
Yeah. So there is like 3 hours of score for that audiobook that will never come out. Anyway,
Until you just said that, and there are like 4 people on Twitter who are going to bug me about it for months.
that's fine. They can do that. I don't look at
You already upset the Oboids. I don't know. You were...
Yeah, I don't know. I made a binaural version of it too. That's a project that I made in Ambisonics. Then we sort of exploded it into Wavefield, but I also made like a binaural mix and a couple of very ambisonic versions of it too. That I made in Reaper, of course, because if you're doing any binaural, like if you're doing ambisonics, you kind of have to work in Reaper. Oh, right.
So we opened 3 different DAWs during this presentation.
Well, I mean, that's like, I kind of work in all 3 equally.
No, I know. I'm just saying we needed to show off.
Yeah. What file am I looking for?
And all of them talked very nicely with Zoom.
Yeah. Sound
Pro.
I'm gonna search. Reaper is not great at relinking files.
We are about to embark on an extremely, it hasn't been announced yet, but I'll just talk about it here anyway. We're about to embark on a crazy experiment with our orchestra where we are going to record each member of the orchestra from home to assemble an orchestra piece. Ooh. But the TAC students are going to be controlling Reaper on the players' computers because they don't know how to do the self-record or the tempo maps. So each player will have a TAC student through Zoom controlling Reaper and tracking them and comping them for a 40-minute piece. And we're going to attempt to assemble the entire orchestra. And the students are going to mix it and track it. I can't say yet, but it's really good.
That's awesome.
I can't decide whether I want it to be
classical music. I'll say that much. It's like
I was going to say I can't decide if I want it to be something wacky that you can't tell how fucked up it's going to be. But it's like a Frederick Jevsky, or if I want it to be like Mahler's Fifth. We're trying so hard to do Mahler's Fifth.
That sounds like my worst nightmare ever. No, I'll tell you this much about it. it's there's sections that are in just intonation, so we're gonna have to build a template with the just intonation backing track sent out to each player, and they're gonna have to have a tuner on their screen while they're tracking it. And
that's pretty tight. But also, everyone's room is gonna sound insane. So you're like, hey, the second viola is like recording in a water basin.
Yeah, so this is where the production skills of all these students right now who are listening to this and hearing what you guys have accomplished, they have to produce all these students and figure out how to make that sound good.
But they should, if I could weigh in, I think the feature is that everyone's room sounds like shit and it sounds crazy different, instead of trying to make everyone's room sound good or the same or like neutral. Like really, like the number of like layered insane acoustic spaces is going to be the feature that's like the coolest thing up.
That's cool.
Lean into that, don't fight it. Yeah,
lean in, don't fight it. Exactly.
We're trying to at least get them all the same microphone. Like we haven't asked out to a microphone company like to sponsor us, so we'll give us 300
I mean, you need some control variable, right?
Yeah, totally. And then I'm considering making a mock-up of the entire thing, just like having someone really pro make a mock-up of the whole thing, so then later we can like blend them together and like fill it out and produce it like in post.
Did you see that Spitfire thing? That he just did. Spitfire, the sampler instrument company, just did that music by 300 different people. That he posted a tempo and a chord progression, and he was like, "Do whatever," and then he mixed like 380 tracks together or something.
Did it sound good?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's like some gimmicky bullshit, but it's pretty cool.
Speaking of gimmicky bullshit, if we can plug something, I mean, this also reminds me of the fact that we did this live album.
That's your gimmicky bullshit.
Which I do want anyone listening to this to understand how excited about this and how proud of it we are. That we brought Christopher with us on tour, and he recorded our set every night on tour, but not as one would a normal live album. He would like find something that rattled during our sound check because of us playing on stage. So like a window that was like buzzing with certain bass frequencies, and he would tape a mic to that. And every night he recorded 24 channels of different, like a microphone in a refrigerator, a microphone in the sink in the men's room, a microphone in the shower backstage. And so you can't exactly hear our songs, but you hear a lot of weird rattling and I mean, sort of the idea of like how far away can a microphone be and still be a recording of a specific thing, like
yeah, fishing it in the plumbing with hydrophones, underwater microphones.
I mean, and they're all perfectly synced. Like it's during, it's like literally they took
their live
while we were playing. They were just really far away from us and recording something that like wasn't necessarily how a normal live recording. And it's like, you know, you think of some of the like the craziest live recordings of all. Like I was thinking of the Replacements bootleg called "The Shit Hits the Fans," which was a really terrible live recording by the Replacements where they're all too wasted to play. And also it was recorded on one microphone in a stairwell behind a closed door backstage, but you can kind of hear the songs. And like, what if we do this on purpose? Right?
Yeah. Very imaginary landscapes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except that they were not imaginary. They were real.
Oh, when you were playing the cassette recording you made of you running around breathing, it's like the most personal clipping project ever in terms of you as individuals.
Yeah, there's
also it's the only place that and Drownter, I think the only places on a clipping album where you can hear my voice.
Yeah.
No, you're in the you're in the intro on Splinter Misery, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe there are a couple more places where you can hear Jonathan's voice, but like, pretty rare to hear mine.
You can hear me in Mob to It, right? I'm laughing.
That's right. Yeah. Your voice. You and Deborah.
Yeah, Deborah. And then does Talkbox count? Because I do the bass line in Mob.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're a full-on Talkbox feature in it.
Yeah, like Roger and Zapp Talkbox bass line.
Yeah, every time I play that live album through, there's always some new focus I notice. There's so much grunting. Like I was carrying a gong,
Yeah,
And,
yeah. So
and
there's a part of the recording where the only microphone you're hearing on the live recording is a microphone that was in Christopher Flieger's mouth while he was being crowd surfed at one of our shows.
Where is
You hear the song,
The best show,
but the
Johnson
microphone
City.
is in his mouth, and you're just hearing him going.
Christopher Flieger. That is, I've known many Christopher Flieger happenings in my time knowing Christopher Flieger that fit that bill.
I have the whole assembly open if we want to hear any part of it.
Oh, there you go.
This is like the assembly of the crash down of all the stems. So the individual sessions were a lot crazier. Like this is just like I made because Bill and Flieger basically made the whole thing, and I just kind of did at the end and added a couple of sounds here and there. But I made them print stems so that I didn't have like 90 billion tracks.
And the stems were insane.
Yeah.
Oh, look.
Oh, look who it is.
Got on my lap.
I don't know where my jerks are. They're just not being sociable.
Hi.
Can't hear that.
The unfortunate thing about this release is we picked Record Store Day, where crowds of people get together in a small
only
room.
Yeah.
What's the name of this release?
It's called Double Live.
Double Live.
It's gonna be a hit. Noise vocals by Michaela Tobin.
Yeah.
Ooh, can we isolate that sink track? That the men's restroom sink?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to record it out of my laptop speakers now as you're playing it back. And
The bootleg. Bootleg.
Yeah, well, no, it was supposed to come out in 17 days, but there's no Record Store Day anymore, so I don't know what we're supposed to do about it.
Oh no,
it's already been sitting around for over a year because no one.
Yeah, that.
Good stuff.
Hey, I did a shout out for you, Christopher, earlier to the students on your film protesting the Dixie Chicks. For anyone that doesn't know, now
that's how I. Oh yeah, that's how I got to California. But
it's an amazing documentary that Christopher Flieger made, where he followed the Dixie Chicks around the country and interviewed people who were protesting them after they
the singer made a comment against
after
George W. Bush.
Yeah, they said they were embarrassed he was from Texas.
It's an amazing documentary. The first time I watched it in a room with all people who were Swiss, and it was like this really interesting window into American life for them. It's quite good.
Yeah, if you ever, it's not much different now than it was in 2003, but if you ever want to compare the times. I have a project called Cooling Prongs, in which Jonathan has done more work than I have. I'll send him like I'll send him 128 tracks.
You generated 128 tracks per song.
And then I'll send him another session of another 128 because I can't fit that on my computer.
But someone had to sing along with Huell Hauser 128 times.
I think the incredible part of that project is someone who mixed it. Nobody else would.
Yeah, that record is out now on Death Bomb, which is very good. Very good record.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone get that. If anyone's still watching.
I think they are. The comments are kind of crazy. I'm looking forward to actually reading them later. I've been glancing over. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time, for your work, for sharing it with us. You thread a really interesting line between a lot of different places that I think are really important for our students to be exposed to and understand through many paradigms of technical mixing, production. There's super deep poetry, you know, the conceptualization and everything. So thank you. We're super looking forward to master classes with Jonathan next week. Jonathan is going to take a look at our students' tracks and give them feedback. So you can join us back here next week. I can't remember, what day is it, Jonathan, that you're coming back on?
Is it Tuesday, Wednesday? I don't know. Time has lost all meaning to me.
Check the schedule online for those of you that want to tune in. It's bit.ly/SFCM TAC. You can get the whole schedule there. We have Matmos, Holly Herndon, and master classes with Jonathan. So, and tomorrow night, Barry Through, the executive director of Gray Area, and I will be chatting. So thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Thanks for having us do this.
Oh, my pleasure.